Good morning, readers and friends of all things Outlander. The story of Outlander wants to release you to live a good story. I'm Jenny, and I need release for living a good story too. Welcome. I've been thinking about you guys all week long, especially after our latest episode, Blood of My Blood, that we had last weekend. And I want to talk to you today about that episode, and I want to talk to you about the intersection between your life story and the story of Outlander, because I believe discovering a good story helps you live a good story. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why this show and this story means so much to us, because you're probably here from one of the Outlander fan communities. Welcome. And I wish that we could all sit down and talk together about this story and why it means so much to us. So let's talk about last week. And one of the things that stood out to me about last week is that there were three peoples, from my perspective, three people who were having significant things happen in their life story. I think of Lord John, I think of William, and I think of Jamie. Now, what I would like to know from you is, whose story do you believe was being told last week? Because I think it could be many people's each episode, but I want to narrow it down today and say that what was happening in Jamie's story was the most significant to me personally. So what was yours? Because you had three things going on. You had William. He struggles with feeling like an orphan. He has lost two mothers. He's lost Mac, and whether he consciously knows it or not, there's a significant connection there. And he's worried about losing Lord John Grey. He is feeling like an orphan. Lord John, from my perspective, is feeling like a widower, and that brings a whole other level of pain, right? He cannot be with the love of his life, and Isabel has just died. So he is literally and figuratively a widower. He has no one in his life that he can share his most intimate places with. And then you have Jamie. And I would like to focus on Jamie. But before I do that, let's talk about that scene between Clare and Lord John, where Clare says, I was born this way. I was born this way. And I know the Lady Gaga song all comes into our heads, but think of this. Clare's forthrightness. She can't shrug it off. She says, I was born this way. And Lord John Grey breaks our hearts when he says, so was I. And what I would ask you today is, how were you born? What part of your life, no matter how hard you've tried, have you not been able to shrug off? And I would suggest that however you would answer that question is super important. You know, I turned 50 in 4 months, and there's parts of me that I have not been able to shrug off in 50 years because I believe I was born this way. And believe me, I have tried, and you've probably tried too. And Lord John Grey has tried, right? And Clare has tried. And then let's talk about Jamie. So Jamie's story is what I specifically was impacted by. To me, there were three significant things that happened, at least. One is that dinner table conversations that happen, okay? And I want to think about who is sitting around that table. Clare, Jamie, Lord John Grey, William, and Murtaugh. And think about how Jamie's experience with all of them is very profound and very different. And they haven't crossed paths a lot as a group, but Jamie's connection to all of them is very, very rich and important. So as you were experiencing that scene at the dinner table, what kind of things were you going through? Personally, I was holding my breath because I could feel it. I could feel like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, right? Is Myrta and Lord John going to come to blows over politics? Clare, I can feel her just going, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Is Ardsmere going to come out? Is William's parentage going to come out? I mean, William and Myrta talking about eating rats is really pretty tame, right? Compared to what could have actually been said at that table. And throughout the episode, Jamie has significant connections with all of the people at that table, just one-on-one. So there's some very significant things happening to Jamie. So then the other thing too was that scene between Lord John and Jamie, and I would really love to hear your perspective on this. When Lord John asks Jamie, he says, "Are you content?" And Jamie says, "Why wouldn't I be? I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this." And yet some of us in some of the fan communities this week and some of the other commentaries that I've seen, they're like, finally, Jamie's content. Well, my perspective is that he's still trying to talk himself into it. And I would really like to hear your perspective. Did you believe Jamie when he said he was content? And here's the thing about Jamie's pain and the things that he carries. He has had so much loss. He will never forget those 20 years without Clare. He never forgets the children that he isn't able to parent. I'm not convinced that he's content, and I would really love to hear your perspective. However, I do think he is content in a lot of his moments with the people around that dinner table. His time with William, getting to go camping and hunting and fishing and doing all these things together, I think he was very content. And then I also was so touched by his connection with Clare. Lord John and William right away. William turns around to see Jamie. But when all is said and done, and who knows where Myrta went, right? It's Clare and Jamie again. And he doesn't have to go back to a prison cell. He doesn't have to go back to a cave. He gets to go be with Clare. And their connection is it's so powerful, you guys. Don't you think? 4 seasons in, I can't get over it. 4 seasons in, I still feel like I could cry. 4 seasons in, it's where my feelings around the show just go, and yes, there's corny parts, there's things they say, there's, sound effects that are like, whatever. But the connection that I feel that they have and the intimacy, it's like the rest of the world and all that they've experienced is able to fall away. And it's just the two of them. And it's such a place of comfort. And for Jamie specifically, the question I asked at the beginning, was this Lord John's story this week? Was it William's story this week? Was it Jamie's story this week? It was all of theirs. All of that is going on. But for Jamie who has had to live as a stranger, Jamie who has had to live with so many different names, Jamie is able to have deep, deep connection with Clare. He gets to come home. He's not a stranger anymore. And it deeply, deeply impacts me. And I think it deeply impacts you. That's why you keep showing up. And in my own life and in your life, I'm having to ask the question, how can I be released to live my story? Whether I feel like a stranger or a widow or an orphan, I don't see the lovely connection between Jamie and Claire in the show anymore. Thank goodness for the books. Yes. And what I would wonder about that, Anne, is if you were a book reader first. And, I think that's a very, very honest response. I think that that is true for a lot of us. I think the show has let us down. It certainly let me down. Throughout the time, the time that has gone by. And that's the thing. In our experiences with this show and with this story that matters so much to us, your story is not my story, right? These stories are yours. And so you get to experience them how you experience them. And Anne, I thank you for tuning in. I thank you for sharing your perspective. Even after listening to mine, which was a little bit different, at least for this scene, I really care about when we say Outlander has changed my life. Well, let's get specific and let's talk about that intersection between the story we love and the life that we live. And so no matter where you fall on the show spectrum, on the Jamie and Claire spectrum, I would ask, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It just totally flew out of my head what I was going to share. Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And however you interpreted Blood of My Blood and however the stories of Outlander are impacting you, your story matters. And I want to see our stories be released. I want to see us be able to get specific about how Outlander has changed our life and have it go into our day-to-day life. So just to clarify, my way was to ask myself, how was I born this way? In a way that Claire and Lord John admit. And also, how am I meant to be released to live my story, my experience, even if it's not like the experience of the people who are the closest to me? So that's what I want to share with you today. And if you haven't yet, take the quiz about the gift that Outlander wants to give you. It's a perfect time of year. The link is in the show notes, and find out the gift that Outlander has to give to you according to a fun quiz that I was able to create. So my work as a bookstore owner and as a speaker and a teacher is to share with you how discovering a good story can help us live a good story. What can your story be? Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the next episode, I hope. If not, and enjoy the books. Love you all. Bye.